It's been a day of meetings. Dave, let us know when we're ready to start. We're ready to start? Fabulous. All right. I'd love to call this meeting to order, and let's start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone can rise. Hand over heart. Feet up for me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. I didn't know which flag to look at. There was one on the screen, one back here. Perfect. Let's have a roll call, please.
Thank you. For Camarillo Authority, Chair Kelly Long,
Here.
Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Here.
Vice Chair Tony Tremblay, Council Member Susan Santangelo.
Here.
Scott Bear.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum for Camarillo.
Thank you.
For Oxnard Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long,
Here.
Chair Vianney Lopez,
Here.
Council Member Bert Perello,
Here.
Public Member Barbara Filkins.
Here.
Thank you. And for the record, Vice Chair Gabe Turan has been excused from this evening. We have a quorum for Oxnard.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up, we have our agenda review. Is there any change in our agenda?
Madam Chair, there are no changes, neither for the Oxnard nor Camarillo Authority agendas.
Thank you. So moving to approval of the minutes for April 11th for the Camarillo Airport. Is there any change or can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the April 11th minutes.
There's been a first and a second. And all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? That motion approves.
Okay, for Oxnard, do we have any changes or a motion on the minutes? All right, I will move approval. Okay, I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstentions? All right.
Motion approved. Great. Next up we have is our public comments. Do we have any here in person or on Zoom?
Madam Chair, we do have one public comment in person. Before I announce that, I want to mention that to members of the public who wish to address the commission and authorities tonight with live public comments on any agenda item, please visit www.vcairports.org/meeting-calendar for participation instructions, streaming links, meeting IDs, and passcodes. For in-person public comment, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the secretary before the end of the public comment period for items listed on the agenda. Speakers will be called to speak after the agenda item is presented. For our remote participants via Zoom or telephone, please accept the prompt to be promoted as speaker and unmute your mic when it is your turn to speak. In-person and remote participants will have 3 minutes to make their comment. And we currently have one in-person comment. Dan Eustace.
You're up.
I'm sorry, this wasn't on, across from the CAF Museum. The area along Eubanks where we had our volunteer parking, the area south of that. And a couple other lots. So when you add all those together, it's about another 1,000 spaces that we've lost. Fortunately, the DOA is working to prepare an area for us that is just north of the dirt portion of Willis. It's a long rectangular area. And I'm hoping we can get at least 200 cars in there, maybe more. But it's a help, but it doesn't solve the problem. So bottom line is we've lost about 2/3 of our parking. And there's no place to make it up. Just no. So we're looking at off-site parking. One area is across the Las Posas over behind the outlet malls, and another is a space about 5 miles away. All of these present numerous problems, not the least of which is the cost. We've added up and estimated a cost of about $30,000 between renting the space, paying the buses, signage, and additional law enforcement support that we're going to need to get into the airport at the Station 50 entrance. And so I know that all this leasing is great for the enterprise fund. We don't want to take away from that. At the same time, now we have this problem, and making up $30,000 is just a huge amount in a very short period of time. So what we're asking you to consider is covering that off-site parking cost from the enterprise fund, not from somebody's budget, but from that fund itself. And I don't have any more details. If I did, I'd share them with you, but we're still negotiating for this off-site stuff. So we'll get further details for you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comment. I would just ask you to be working with our Director of Airports.
Yeah.
Thank you. We just can't really respond because public comment, it's your turn to tell us your issue or concerns. Yeah,
As long as the chair is recommended to look at the Department of Air, I suggest possibly looking at the city of Camarillo, being it's adjacent. And we have members of Camarillo. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. We have a receive and file of our monthly staff update from Communications and Engagement Management regarding the airport. Hello.
Hello. Good evening to you all. My presentation tonight is twofold. I will be sharing information about the 2024 Fly Friendly BC annual fly-in event, and we'll also share our two most recent spotlight stories. As you may know, the Department of Airports launched Fly Friendly BC in September 2022 as a way to address noise concerns from the community and to also establish and nurture positive relationships with pilots and flight schools that utilize Camarillo and Oxnard airports. To date, the department has hosted 3 successful flying events that are designed to stay connected to pilots and flight schools by providing program updates. This year's Fly Friendly BC flying event was held at Oxnard Airport on May 22nd. We welcomed our largest group of pilots and discussed program successes thus far, areas in which improvements are still needed, and introduced a new element to the program that focuses on jet operations out of Camarillo Airport. This addition to Fly Friendly BC specifically targets nighttime jet operations and reminds flight operators of the joint powers agreement with the city of Camarillo, which does not allow departures from Camarillo Airport between midnight and 5 a.m. and asks that all flight activity be avoided between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Additionally, the Fly Friendly BC jet procedures calls for nighttime arrivals on runway 8 at Camarillo Airport whenever possible. Communication piece is being finalized and will be distributed to all FBOs and flight operators connected to Camarillo Airport. And now we'll go on to our spotlight stories. Tonight, I eagerly share our 7th and 8th stories in our Spotlight Story series, focusing on the Commemorative Air Force Museum and Dr. Eugene Fussell. The Commemorative Air Force Museum. In 1942, the United States Army Air Corps took a piece of the undeveloped farmland at the eastern end of the Oxnard Plain and established what became known as Oxnard Flight Strip. A few wooden hangars were built, all designed to meet the temporary needs of World War II, and drafted and enlisted airmen from across the country were assigned for flight training and maintenance throughout the remainder of the war. For the next 20 years, the more than 300 acres of land was intermittently under the control of the United States Department of Defense, with the longest standing assignment going to the United States Air Force from 1951 to 1969. During that time, the airfield became known as the Oxnard Air Force Base, a booming segment of this country's Air Defense Command that became an ideal assignment for any airman because of the weather and proximity to Los Angeles and the beach. The base even served as a designation airfield for President Kennedy when he visited Naval Air Station Point Mugu. In 1976, the County of Ventura reacquired the land. With the establishment of the city of Camarillo just 12 years before, the land became known as Camarillo Airport, a general aviation airport designed to meet the needs of small and executive aircraft. In 1981, the temporary wooden hangars that had been built for World War II still stood and became home to the Commemorative Air Force Museum's Southern California Wing. The nationally based organization, which started in 1957, operates with a single purpose: to preserve the history of United States military aircraft. The location was ideal. A historic yet undesignated landmark that once housed this country's Air Force would now serve as a site for preservation. The wing was assigned its first aircraft in 1981. The C-46 was a passenger aircraft turned transport plane that served actively during World War II and Korea. With missions in China, Burma, India, and the Pacific, the C-46 was unpressurized and required manual navigation. It could carry 10,000 pounds of cargo and became an ideal aircraft to supply supplies over the hump on the eastern end of the Himalayan mountains. The Southern California Wings collection gradually grew over the next 2 decades as the Camarillo location became a full-fledged museum. The wooden hangars were demolished in the late 1990s and were replaced with a more modern look. Additional aircraft were assigned by headquarters or were borrowed from members. Exhibits were established, including one featuring models of every aircraft that flew out of Oxnard Flight Strip and Oxnard Air Force Base from 1942 to 1969, with others focusing on women in aviation, the Tuskegee Airmen, military uniform displays, a model Sherman tank, Army Jeep, and more. Now occupying 3 hangars at Camarillo Airport, the Southern California Wing holds a vital role in the annual Wings Over Camarillo Air Show. Additionally, the wing offers a ride program for the community to experience what it's like to fly in several of the aircraft on display. What started as a hobby became an urgent objective to preserve history, the Commemorative Air Force Headquarters said of their objective. The Southern California Wing and its docents, who have lived experience on the aircraft, work weekly to meet that objective. And in doing so, they honor the stories of local and national heroes that might have otherwise been lost. And here we have pictures, courtesy of the Commemorative Air Force Museum, of their Zero, their Japanese Zero, and World War II aircraft, and then their B-25. So we're really grateful for the Commemorative Air Force Museum for their partnership and for welcoming me in there to be able to share this story. Our next story focuses on Dr. Eugene Fussell, who stepped down from the Oxnard Airport Authority earlier this year after more than 20 years as an active member. This story is our way of honoring his commitment to the Department of Airports and to local aviation. There wasn't a lot that the small country town in Southeast Georgia offered the Fussells 6 children. It was the 1940s and 50s, and Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation. Life for the Fussells was good, but it wasn't easy. Mr. Fussell was a farmer and harvested pecans, cotton, corn, cabbage, cucumbers, tobacco, and sweet potatoes. Mrs. Fussell was a teacher and was insistent that her children were going to make a difference. Skipping college wasn't an option by the time Eugene Fussell graduated from high school. His older brothers had set the precedent. Eugene was enrolled in medical school at Meharry Medical College in Nashville when he and some of his friends learned about an externship program offered by the Navy. We didn't really know much about the Navy, Eugene said. We decided to join because it seemed like a good opportunity. It was 1961. The initial incentive program led Eugene to the National Naval Medical Center, now Walter Reed, in Bethesda, Maryland, for a summer program. I was interested in surgery, he said. I started in general surgery when I was transferred to the Naval Hospital in New York. He continued the program and eventually completed his residency at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego, where he opted to specialize in orthopedic surgery. Eugene spent 10 years on active duty as a Navy surgeon stationed at Great Lakes, New York, San Diego, and his final stop at Port Hueneme. My time at Port Hueneme is what brought me to my home in Oxnard, he said. Eugene settled in his new home with his family, which eventually came to include 4 daughters. He continued his work with the Navy as a reserve while focusing on his own private practice as an orthopedic surgeon based in Oxnard. He also pursued his passion for flying, an opportunity that became available to him while stationed at Port Hueneme. He joined the Point Mugu Flying Club and utilized the GI Bill's aviation program to pay for flight training. In addition to his pilot's license, Eugene also earned his commercial license and multi-engine and instrument rating certificates. He purchased a Bonanza and then a Duke, both based at Oxnard Airport, and flew recreationally throughout the United States. Eugene's surgical practice remained open for 30 years until he retired in 2000. Just 2 years earlier, Eugene officially retired from the Navy, having worked his way up to the rank of Rear Admiral. In total, his service spanned 37 years. Eugene's work in medicine continued beyond retirement. He spent 15 years as a chief medical officer for Dignity Health's Southwestern region. He celebrated his final retirement in 2015, but has remained active on the governing board of St. John's Medical Center, where he spent decades performing surgery. Throughout his career, Eugene remained active in Oxnard Airport as a member of the Experimental Aircraft Association and member of the Airport Authority for Ventura County Department of Airports, a position he held for more than 20 years before he stepped down in 2024. Perhaps his greatest achievement has been in watching his mother's legacy of making a difference continue with his children, who each hold impressive roles of their own as a school administrator, psychiatric social worker, physician, and attorney. I've been fortunate in my life, he said. My work as a surgeon was transformative. I was able to be part of a life-changing experience for people of all ages, athletes, young people, and older people struggling with mobility. It has been a rewarding journey. I learned after speaking with one of Dr. Fussel's daughters by chance a couple weeks ago that he also performed the first hip replacement in Ventura County. So very impressive. Very much an honor for me to be able to share this story, and I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you so much. And what a wonderful tribute to Dr. Fussell. I wish, hopefully he's watching, and we can share that. He was such a great service to us all being on this authority. Is there any comments or questions?
Comment, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Jen, thanks for these are excellent stories. I've had the privilege of serving with Gene on St. John's board for several years, and he's one of the finest people I know, and his dedication to medicine and to his community is just about unparalleled. So it's really important that these kind of stories get out. So I really want to thank you for all the work that you are doing, because it really brings to life what's going on here. And it's
Thank
very
you.
helpful. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, and he is so humble. He's just here to serve, and it's just extraordinary. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's no motion, it's just receive and file. So
Thank
thank
you.
you, and we love the stories
Thank you.
and the history.
Chair, and for the record, we do not have any public comment on this matter.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Next up, we have an authorization for the Director of Airports for his designee to award for annual consulting service contracts for fiscal 2024-25. Ms. Powers?
Good evening, yes. Thank you, chairs, authority members, Erin Powers, Projects Administrator. each year, we bring this item before you as the department looks to enter into annual services contracts with several professional consulting firms to support operations and projects at Camarillo and Oxnard airports. Once an annual contract is in place, work orders are issued against the contract for specific services or tasks. The contracted services include just, but are not limited to engineering and plan review, specification writing, construction estimation, project oversight and inspection, environmental planning, as well as independent fee estimates. It's important to note that this action to approve the annual service contracts does not result in an immediate fiscal impact, as there is no obligation to issue any work orders against the contracts during the term of the contracts. It is a fiscal impact occurs only when a work order is issued. So the department has sufficient revenue appropriations available in the department's proposed fiscal 24-25 budget for these type of contracts, and therefore staff is requesting your commission recommend the board, your authority, recommend the board approve the stated recommendations.
Thank you. And any questions? Please.
Ms. Powers, I see in the recommendation section of the agenda, it mentions projects up to $200,000 for other services. What would that, give me some examples. What would other services be for $200,000?
I'm sorry, I was trying to have a list of the contracts up so you could see. So the maximum that is allowed is up to 200,000. And the other services are, so we have the services listed here. You may be familiar with the fact that we bring contracts before your authority individually that exceed Keith's authority to be able to award. And so we seek the Board of Supervisors final approval on those. These annual service contracts are for items that are generally smaller in nature, usually non-grant based requests, and sometimes are operationally, they allow us, for example, when we have large developments coming in to redevelop acreage, we'll be able to use our environmental planning firm, Kaufman Associates, to help us in our role as a lead agency reviewing the documents. Additionally, sometimes we have specific requests about aircraft and impacts. We might be able to reach out to one of our consultants and authorize a work order to provide the analysis we need to be able to respond appropriately to requests that we receive. We also manage to be able to complete smaller projects. It could be a small paving job. Initially, we have slated later this year a taxiway alpha repair at Camarillo Airport. In the initial stages of having some pavement failures, we were able to issue a work order to have the consultant do a quick evaluation to see whether we could just do a quick patch and what alternate methods would help us quickly get our taxiway back in service. So I would say that those are the type of activities that we use these annual contracts to help us quickly turn around information that is a little separate than a full project.
Okay, and with that, any other further questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for the report. In the actual body of the recommendation, there is one thing. Under section B, it says cost and engineering / estimating inspection. Is cost engineering the same as value engineering? Ask that question. We get development instruction of the school. They brought somebody in after all of the things were done. They found out.
So it could be one that could definitely be a part of that. We use it at cost engineering as cost estimates, but we would use the same language to do value engineering, which we have attempted when we've received a bid. We can't renegotiate prices, but we can work with the contractor if they're willing to value engineer an item to see if there's a alternate methodology that would bring the price down through different means and methods, but same item of work.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very much. Demonstrated qualifications required by the county. Negotiations that resulted in fee schedules considered fair and reasonable for the qualifications. Entering into an annual consulting services contract does not guarantee any work for or obligate the county to engage the services of a consultant. And if you have any questions, get a hold of us. How do individuals that have not done the work with the county get on a list to be considered? Because I see that we don't go out for request for proposals. How does Joe consultant name considered?
You know, I would say that reaching out to a department and expressing interest, they can get on an interest list. Each year when, you know, there is a protocol, we follow the same, process that Public Works, that General Services Agency for the county does for these type of annual contracts. In this case, the consultants that you see here, most of them went through a 5-year selection process. So they've been pre-screened. And then we have been satisfied with their work, which is part of the process requirements. So if someone is interested in perhaps getting a annual service contract, and we believe that there's value in having that area added, then the first way is to contact the department.
The only reason I ask is make it open for as many opportunities provided.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the explanation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? If not, a motion to approve for the airport authority.
Madam Chair, I do want to note that we do not have any public comment for this record.
Thank you. Thank you. And a second, please. All right, it's been first and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? That motion is approved for the Camarillo.
For Oxnard, do we have a motion on the recommendations for this item?
I'll motion for items 1 and 2. Staff recommendation.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstentions? All right.
Motion's approved. Great. Next up, we have is our approval of authorization the director of airports for his designee to sign contract amendments to extend the contract expiration dates for 4 contracts through June 30th, 2025. There's no change in total cost of the contract. I like saying that part.
We do too. We do too. It's not always the case. And I apologize, I did have a slide that showed the listed out the projects in the last one, but it was user error. I couldn't get it to go, but it wasn't on. So I do apologize. These contracts before you differ from the last item in the sense that they're not annual contracts. I do want to mention that those annual contracts really serve a period of time, July 1st to June 30th, whereas the consulting contracts I am talking about tonight may occur over multiple fiscal years. To support projects at Camarillo and Oxnard airports, the department enters into various consulting contracts for planning, design, and construction management services. Typically, the contract period identified in each contract reflects adequate time to complete the performance of the work. However, in recent years, the airport has undertaken several significant projects and experienced the impacts of limited staffing levels, both in-house and via project stakeholders that we coordinate with, which has led to this request today to extend the contract expiration dates of 4 contracts so that we may complete project paperwork, closeouts, and in at least one case, just a final payment. We just need the dates to align. As mentioned by Chair Long, there is no change in total cost of to the contracts, and therefore staff is seeking your recommendations to the board to approve the contract extensions. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions? Comments? If not, a motion for staff recommendation.
I'll move that we, as requested, approve and authorize the director of his airports or designee to sign contract amendments to extend the contract expiration dates of 4 contracts from June 30th, 2025, with no change in the total cost of the contracts.
Second.
Thank you. It's been first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And
And
no,
Madam Chair, I do want to note for the record, we do not have any public comment.
you're training me well. I'm like, oh, she's gonna come
Yeah,
in and
I'm
say
sorry.
that. I love it. Thank you. Okay, there are no public comments. So with that, any no's or abstentions? The motion is passed unanimously. Thank you.
All right, and for Oxnard as well, right? Okay, so for Oxnard, do we have any questions, comments, or a motion? I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any no's or abstentions? Okay. All right, so I believe the next item is Oxnard Airport Authority, so item 6D, and I will just hand it over to Ms. Powers. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be my final item for tonight. In September of 2023, the Board of Supervisors awarded a construction contract to Security Paving Company for the reconstruction of taxiway Foxtrot, now renamed Alpha, which is currently under construction. As a Part 139 airport, you may have heard before that the Oxnard Airport was mandated to use a particular formula of firefighting foam, which is no longer used, that contained a long string of chemical names that I cannot pronounce, but is abbreviated to PFAS. Testing at the locations where the foam had previously been released found PFAS in very low concentrations within the soil. As such, there was potential for the excavated soil from the current project to contain PFAS compounds. So the project was bid to allow for offsite disposal or stockpiling, or a combination of both based on any findings. Following soil testing in accordance with a work plan approved by the Los Angeles Water Board, the soil was cleared to be hauled off-site to a landfill as non-hazardous waste. Therefore, change order number 1 will increase the disposal quantities and subsequently decrease the stockpile and the stockpile management quantities in the bid to allow for the offsite disposal of all of the excavated soil as non-hazardous waste. The contract change order requested is an amount of $173,284 and will increase the contract price from $17,365,010 to a total amount of $17,538,294, which exceeds the Director of Airports authority. Therefore, we are asking the board to approve change order number 1. And while I'm up here, I also wanted to take the opportunity to share a couple of key things about this project that distinguish it from the other phases of projects that we have been completing, because I do believe that there has been some confusion in the community, which for us results in a complaint to the water board regarding material stockpiles during our active construction. So first off, so these are the stockpiles that certainly raise some concern. But I wanted to make sure that that we are really clear that there is no stockpiling of excavated soil occurring as a part of this project. As I mentioned, we had completed the waste characterization, soil testing, and we will be disposing of all soil offsite. That doesn't mean, though, that we won't have any material stockpiles on site, but the material stockpiles on site are either clean imported material or asphalt grindings, as you see here, that are being temporarily placed before use. I'll just have a picture of. Oh. Am I doing it? What picture? Okay. I am user error again. 1 second. The buttons are sensitive.
Yeah.
Oh, the other one, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so I only have one picture slide. Essentially, I was just going to show, we had a picture of the actual milling of the asphalt going into a dump truck, which was the result of these asphalt grindings. I do want to also make sure to say that the complaint that was filed with the water board was focused on the asphalt grindings. And the case has since been resolved and closed satisfactory by the water board. And additionally, that the water board is in concurrence with our reuse of the asphalt grindings. So we will have no soil stockpiled on site. And this is different, and I think this is where the confusion came in. Our previous taxaway Alpha through Echo reconstruction project, the requirement for some of the soil testing for this particular compound was new and occurred after we had already been under contractual obligation with the contractor to begin the project. And so our remedy to that was to stockpile the material to be able to test later. In this case, because we knew that was what they would be looking for, we were able to work with the water board ahead of the project and build in to our bid items the ability to either stockpile or dispose, and also to complete testing before we actually put a shovel on the ground. And then one of the other changes from the prior phases is that this project is occurring during the daytime. And so any trucking related to disposal offsite of the soil is all occurring during daytime hours, and project hours. So there'll be, a lot of airport work takes place at night. And I know that caused a bit of a disturbance for the community. So we worked hard to see what we could do about that. And in this case, we were able to make this daytime work. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions about the change order or the project.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. I think I saw Supervisor Long raise her hand first and then Councilmember Perrella.
I wanted to say thank you for highlighting that. There has been issues or questions of work, dirt, trucking, and at night being a concern. So I appreciate that. And knowing that there's no toxic chemicals there that would cause any community to have an issue with that. I think it's very important to make sure they know. So thank you for that information. I appreciate it.
All right, Councilmember Perrella.
Thank you for the report. I think you hit it right in the head. There's been a degree of confusion with respect to what I know of having firsthand sat, heard, listened, seen, and talked. The Juan Soria School adjacent to the airport on the other side of Pittsburgh is in the Seaview neighborhood. There was a neighborhood council meeting. Some individuals come from another neighborhood who are on an air quality issue, and they make apparently they've made multiple presentations at the airport advisory information. The other organization needs there. The concerns that they have, they're blending them with the pictures that were there. I believe they're some of the people that sent the pictures.
Okay.
The dirt on the other side of Ventura Road and the claims of the lead and what happened in Santa Clara County with the school and lead testing for the children. These were all vocalized in front of a lot of excited parents. And there was a representative for the supervisor. Mr. Lopez was there, myself was there. Can't answer everything. I can't speak for you guys, but you give some information, what you know. The confusion, maybe you can address a little more, because what you're addressing is the ground up aspect. Understand. What we still don't know, it's not on the agenda here, is what's going to be done with the soil, because you're still trying to find out. It's on the other side of Ventura Road, covered in tarps. What will be done with it? Because that has riled up, as my fellow councilman who's not here tonight, he has another obligation. The neighborhood he lives in, those are, they want to know what's going to happen. They are adamant they don't want it spread on the property, and they want answers. I'm very surprised none of them show up here for as hot as they get. I shared all of this with Superintendent School. She was very surprised. There were accusations and claims made at the neighborhood council meeting that people were being denied shared information. She assures me that's not happening. And I wanted to share that. I appreciate the presentation. The question still comes, and it's not tonight. What are they finding with the soil that's on Ventura Road? What's gonna happen? How much is it gonna cost? And where's it gonna go? And I'm not asking that now, but I'm just
Sure.
putting it out there. Everyone on this board to be aware. There's a lot of residents that are concerned about that, but there's a lot of, in my opinion, misinformation going out about, exhaust and dumping fuel.
Sure. And
I think it's a fair question that we can answer now because it's on, it touches this at least. What has happened is at least we have tested, we haven't got the final results on those parcel storage on the 11 acres. So once we have that, and that's, we're just following the water board's direction. It's not toxic. It's a chemical concern, the PFAS, and keeping it from the water source. That's why it's got plastic liners underneath, plastic liners on the top. And then it's just a decision where it goes from there. We will not stay there ultimately on those 11 acres, either come back to the airport and stored long-term or removed off like the other soil that we just tested to be determined. So we're close. Yes.
And I appreciate you keeping the city of Oxnard on there too. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you a question on that? In regards to public outreach with that? Are we working with the school district or is there any public information being put out into our community, the neighborhood?
so I know that that as part of their response to the community concern of the the stockpile during the current phase of the asphalt grindings, that we did share that we had tested the materials and that we were waiting for the report to be able to coordinate with the water board. And our goal, if we are able to, is to remove or relocate the stockpile by the end of the calendar year. But it's all dependent on what the water board will coordinate with us.
And I think going to your point, Supervisor, we've learned before we do anything with that dirt, we will have a very large outreach to the community. This is what we found. Ultimately, this is our plan. So they don't see anything for the first time.
Well, and the reason why I ask is, as we know, if you don't hear anything, that's just as bad as if you hear, okay, well, I just think it's more important that we state we are continuing to work on this, the deadline, we're estimating this time just as a refresh so that it's not a sounding drum that someone else uses against us.
And we're more than happy to have, the schools, the school superintendent, who has concerns to reach out to us. I'm not aware that we haven't directly shared that information, that I personally wasn't aware of that concern.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, Mr. Bear.
Two questions. Am I correct as I was reading the numbers that the cost to the enterprise fund or to the Department of Airports is only 10% and the rest is FAA grant?
So we do anticipate, this is a grant eligible item. We anticipate this will be covered by the FAA. There is always a chance at this moment that they have not accepted the change order yet themselves, but we do have and this is what we need to do. So we have the appropriations necessary if the FAA were to come back, but it's expected that they likely will approve the change order, and it's before them. They have it sitting on their desk.
And this may be a better question for Director Freitas. Councilmember Perello brought up the issue of people talking about the Santa Clara County, the Reed Hillview Airport report and lead and all sorts of parade of horribles. Is anybody correcting the misinformation that's being put out about what that report actually showed?
Probably that'd be best for an agenda item at some point. There was a recent study of Whiteman Airport, the county of LA just did similar line. So that's probably an item that you might agendize. No, would make sense.
I think it would be a good agenda, given the discussion in Oxnard and the ongoing discussion about environmental issues related to the airports. I think that would be a good agenda item.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Powers, for the presentation and the updates, especially mentioning the complaint that was brought to the airport, Department of Airports, and just, I think the ongoing, as has been mentioned, the ongoing effort to ensure that we keep the two items separate just so that there isn't confusion, but that communication is helpful. And I would encourage just anyone else, if we are hearing complaints, right, is to make that connection to staff to ensure that there is clarity on what the issues are and avoid any further confusion and just the misinformation going out there. So, all right. So with that, we do have the recommendation on this item for the change order. Oh, thank you, Councilmember Farrell. Do we have any public comment?
We do not have any public comment.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, with that, do we have a motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstentions? All right. Hand it back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Erin. Next up we have is our director's report.
Thank you, chairs and members of the authority. I have just a few items. The first item was a little bit of background with an item we reported on, Jeanette, our PIO did, regarding SoCal Gas doing 500-foot inspections looking for gas leaks. And the question was, how does that work? So we did a little research talking to Southern California Gas on that. And basically they use LiDAR. Don't ask me the technical side of it, but it's LiDAR radar mapping that detects methane leaks. And that's how they determine whether there's gas leaks. But it's that 500-foot in a helicopter grid across most of our community. We've had multiple of those. That Jeanette's done a great job of getting the heads up, but that's what they're doing, and that's the system they're using. I want to report, I think I have a slide, Taxiway Alpha started in first part of May for Oxnard Airport. It was 3 phases. Again, started May 9th. They're on schedule. Second phase started June 9th. So here's the first pavement that's been redone. Again, it's important to note in the 3 years, last 3 years, we did a runway reopening at Oxnard about 3 years ago, and then the connectors last year. And this is the last piece, which is the parallel taxiway Alpha. So on schedule at this point, it's just started the second phase. Still looking to wrap up about July 31st. Next item, I want to recognize, I reported last couple of meetings that Caltrans came out and did inspection for Oxnard and Camarillo airports. We got a perfect inspection by a Caltrans inspector. And we just had, because Oxnard still maintains its Part 139 certificate, it has an FAA inspection that happens. And again, our operations and maintenance folks did such a fabulous job, 0 deficiencies, which is a huge mark to have both those inspections with 0 deficiencies. So I want to recognize them for that. And the last time I just want to touch on, and we'll hear more about this as we progress. Last Monday, June 3rd, we had Camarillo Airport noise study meeting. It was a listening session. And the following day, we had on June 4th with Oxnard. We had our supervisors come out. The first on June 3rd was Supervisor Long. Thank you again for that. And then on the 4th, we had Supervisor Lopez that attended our Oxnard. Camarillo had about 72 folks attend, Oxnard about 22 folks attend that meeting. Again, it was a listening session, so it was focused on what our community thought we should consider as noise mitigation measures in this whole program that we're at the phase where the community, quite frankly, is most interested because it's what are we going to do? We're doing a lot of good things. Jeanette's leading that for us, but we still have work to do. And once we put it in place, it'll be ongoing work, quite frankly, forever. So I wanted to kind of just put that out.
And also with that, I really appreciate the discussion, Director Freitas, about what else we can do. I know we've been doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, more than we are required, but I think we find so much more when we do these stakeholder engagements. One thing that's bringing in my ears is something I'm hopeful that the board would want to look into. And so I'd like to ask it to come to the agenda just for a discussion is if we can, what can we do to speed up looking at air traffic, how they fly, especially in Camarillo, maybe in Oxnard too, on the flight paths. If
Sure.
there's a way that we could look at it, maybe get a consultant to look at it. And so I think you were saying it takes in our discussion a couple years for the FAA to access and expedite certain things. So wondering if we can do anything that we can also work with the pilots and so forth with our Fly Friendly to state that we have examined the flight paths and maybe we can find some better solutions to help our constituents with the noise. Just thought of doing that. Maybe we can have that as a conversation as what kind of actions you would suggest.
For the next agenda, that's similar along the lines of the letter we received from City of Camarillo.
Yes.
A couple, 2-3 weeks ago, that Mayor Tremblay had signed that to us, listing some of those things. So we'd be happy to bring that back maybe at the next meeting agenda.
Yes, and because exactly, the city stated their concern. Council members, I know we have them in our authority, which is great. Maybe that's something that they would like to see as well.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
I think Mr. Barrett is in the.
Before we get too far off the discussion of the two perfect inspections that we just had, I wanted to thank you, but most importantly, I want to thank your staff who made that happen under your direction clearly, but they made it happen. And too often they don't get recognized and they should. So congratulations to you and to your staff for those two inspections.
As you've heard from me before, my wife says I'm not that smart. So it's a very talented people that keeps, this place going very well. So, but thank you. We appreciate that.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I would echo Mr. Barrett's kudos on that. And just to speak to the issue on noise mitigation for a little bit, I want to tell you, thank you to the Department of Airports for conducting that public workshop on June 3. I was out of town and unable to attend, unfortunately, but I know Councilman was there. A number of folks from the city of Camarillo were there. It's certainly consistent with the May 21 letter that I sent to the Department of Airports in terms of listing a number of very specific items that the department, we strongly urge the department to look at. And it's consistent with council April meeting, the April council meeting that we had, and the direction we received from Councilman Collins on the city. I think right at the top of that list is the alternative flight path model. And as one critical aspect of a potential noise mitigation measure. So I support what the chair has said. I would ask that effort, we bring that back as an agenda item. I'd ask that it would be principally informational at that point, but it would also, I think, be substantive because we would be seeing what the department can do or is in the process of doing on that score. I would ask that whole effort be accelerated to the greatest extent feasible. There are, as I understand it, great differences in time if we just had the FAA do it versus having the Department of Airports permanently retaining a consulting firm to do the upfront modeling and study. I may not be articulating exactly what that.
No, you're
modeling
you're on the money.
I think I'm close. We did I'll just call it the front end work. If we did that front end work, we could cut down some period of time. Realistically, my understanding is that this whole process is going to take a year and a half, 2 years. There's just no way around it. But it certainly would be a shorter period of time if the Department of Airports took that on, had the consulting work done, and then presented those results to the FAA. Absolutely in support of it, and the urge that we in fact
to do that. I very strongly would advocate it. It's consistent with the communications that the city has provided to the Department of Airports. I think my belief is that from a procurement standpoint, that can happen quickly. There doesn't have to be and you can bring this all back to us, but hopefully there's not a formal RFP process.
Well, as you earlier in the agenda was those on-call things, contracts, those are the kinds of things. This is one of those things that we could use to expedite that process. It's not a whole RFP for that.
And as a final, right, and as a final component of that, I think that assuming for sake of conversation that work starts. And we really, and it's accelerated to the greatest extent feasible. It's really important to choose some midpoint prior to, during the course of the work being done. That we come back and that the department schedules a session with the public so it can report to the public on what's going on, because I want to make sure the public understands this is going to take some time. It is what it is. That's reality. But it's also important that in my view, that the department be as transparent as it possibly can be, which, again, it's the issue for the June 3rd workshop. I think it's important to do that as well, so that everyone has an understanding and a chance to learn about how long this is going to take, and then at midpoint where things stand. So all those different components. I certainly agree with Chairman and ask that come back as a formal agenda item. I think we are not meeting in July. Was it August?
I would just ask that they bring it back as soon as they can
Yeah, as soon as
and
you
not
can.
pick a date.
I was just trying to remember which months we were.
Typically, we're
Dark
dark in August and
Right.
December,
Right.
so.
So I just asked that it be brought back at the soonest feasible.
And the last piece I'll share is our next target for public meeting on the noise studies is October. So there is already a built-in logical point to maybe report something about that.
And I don't want to forget that there are other components in the May 21 letter to the department that were also discussed. And I'd certainly appreciate having an update as to those items at that same meeting.
What I'm hearing from the authority members is that we come back with what we think would be the most appropriate, most effective, most urgent thing to do first. Because candidly, the noise study process we're doing is listing all the things we could be doing. So I think what I'm hearing is there something we could cherry pick that would make the most sense and most effective and or has the longest timing where that is, and that's what we bring back.
Right, we get that kickstarted.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Yes, Susan? Councilmember?
Screen now. I wanted to thank you at the June 3rd meeting. I think you and your staff did a really excellent job. There were some passions in the audience. And I just think you were really nimble, and I think you just handled it really well. And I think it was a really effective night. So thank you for that. And then in the interest of time, I will say ditto. I agree with the things that Mr. Tremblay has talked about, and in accordance with the letter that we wrote to you. It would be nice to see that we could say that we're doing something right now, starting to do something right now.
Yes.
That's all I
Okay,
have. Thank you.
any other commissioners? Right. No, I think thank you for bringing to our attention the great work that our maintenance and operations did. 0 issues. That's just beautiful. And just want to say thank you. Both airports seem to be thriving and looking good. So thank you for all the hard work for everybody who's doing that.
Thank you for the support.
All right, moving on, we have our reports. Is there any questions on any of the reports? If not, we'll go to any questions on the correspondence. Any public comment on either of those? Okay, then we'll go on to our authority comments. Commissioner. Any comment that you'd like to add in? All right, we're a quiet group tonight. Thank you so much. And with that, we are adjourned. Did I make it? Oh, beautiful. I I hope everyone has a wonderful dinner now. Go enjoy and thank you so much.